Hello, friends, and welcome to Daily Message. I've been doing a series called Intentional Living, and this is the fourth message. If you missed the first, second, and third teaching, I encourage you to go back because they are foundational and they just keep building on one another. We're studying from Genesis chapter 1, where God comes into the picture, where there's a dark void without form earth, and God comes in with a plan, with a purpose, with words, and he begins to take that which is dark and void and creates it into something that is absolutely beautiful, and where life can not only take place, but life can multiply. Well, as we read through, we not only learn what God did, but it actually has some pretty amazing lessons of how we can go in our own lives from those places in our lives that are dark and void into places that are actually beautiful, full of life and the goodness of God. So I want us to do a quick review, and then we'll begin right with Genesis chapter 1. We're going to read verses 3 and 4. Again, creation shows us that God brings order out of chaos. So number 1, God had a plan. Number 2, God spoke the plan. Number 3, God executed the plan in multiple days. It didn't all happen in one day. He executed the plan in multiple days and in a very specific sequence. Well, today we're going to find out that God actually evaluated what he made. Let's look at Genesis chapter 1, verses 3 and 4. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. Now, it sounds kind of silly, like God really needs to evaluate what he does. God only can do good, right? He doesn't know how to not do good. But nevertheless, that phrase is repeated 7 times in chapter 1 of Genesis. God created something, he looked at it, he considered his work, and he considered and saw that it was good. That word good means beneficial. It was of quality. Well, again, it's repeated 7 times, so there's a cycle in Genesis chapter 1. It says God made, God stopped, God saw that it was good, then God made again, then God stopped, he saw that it was good, and then God made again. And this was done throughout the 6 days. At the very end of everything, when he finished, it actually says that God saw that it was all very good. Well, let me ask you a question. How often do you stop and evaluate and consider what you're doing? Again, this is God who does all things well, and yet he teaches us the power of just stopping and looking to see that what we're doing is good before going on to the next thing. How often do we stop to consider and evaluate? You know, we're busy. Life is full, right? We're busy doing, we're busy creating, we're busy making decisions, we're busy spending time, we're busy spending money. We are busy, busy, busy. But my question again is, but how often do we stop to consider that if what we're doing is actually beneficial, is actually good? Do we stop to evaluate the value, the impact of what we're doing? Do we stop to consider, based on the decisions I'm making right now, based on the lifestyle I have right now, based on what I'm doing right now, what is the impact of what I'm doing? See, those are important things to do, to stop and to consider. If we aren't intentional, let me tell you, life becomes a reaction to circumstances, a repetition of generational brokenness, or a go with the flow with society, which we know pretty much leads to destruction. So for us, we're called to live intentionally. And for us to live intentionally, there must be a process in which we stop and we evaluate. Let me give you an example. You know, after praying and seeking the will of God, perhaps you and your boyfriend or your girlfriend decide, you know what, it's the will of God to get married. Well, awesome. Since it's the will of God, we can say that is good. So you stop, you look, it is the will of God, that's good. Then you're back from your honeymoon, and then real married life starts, right? So now you're establishing patterns in your relationship, how you make decisions as a couple, how you communicate together, how you speak to one another, how you spend your time and your money. Well, imagine if in those early days you have these consistent checkpoints where you're actually evaluating whether or not the patterns you're creating are patterns that are good and beneficial, and whether or not they're patterns that you're going to be glad about 10, 20, 30 years from now. Imagine the intentionality of people when they first get married to start with evaluation. Well, you may think, you know what, I'm in my 50s, 60s, 40s. I haven't stopped to evaluate most things in my life. And so where do I start? Start today. Start stopping. Isn't that funny? Start stopping and take a look at various areas of your life and begin to say, Lord, is this good? For example, with raising children, the decisions you're making, the way your children spend the day, the way you speak to your children, the way you work on discipline with your children. If you stop, you can evaluate and say, is this good? Is it producing the right things? How about with your business? My goodness, in business, you can just keep going and going and going without stopping to consider, is what I'm doing creating the results that I know God has called me to have? We stop and we consider. We do that with our career, with our friendships. Some of you are in friendships that are only leading you to places you don't want to be. And if you stop and you evaluate and you consider, is this beneficial? Is this right? And you begin to think about the consequences of your consistent decisions, it makes you pause and go, I think I need to make a different decision. What about your finances? You may be in a place where you're like, I am in so much debt. I don't have enough finances coming in. I didn't evaluate. I just made crazy decisions. And so now what? I'm stuck. No, listen. Remember the power of Genesis chapter 1. God comes into something that is chaotic, dark, and void, and he, by his power, turns it into something that is beautiful, orderly, and full of life. And that's the pattern for you and for I. He wants to partner with you so that truly whatever area of lack has been in your life, truly the shepherd wants to lead you to a place where he can fill it. But it takes cooperation, and it takes our part, it takes to evaluate and to stop, to look at what we're doing just like God did. He created, he made, he stopped, he saw that it was good, then he made again. Well, Jerry and I learned to do this evaluating practice many, many years ago when we were in our early 20s. And, it really became as simple as I believe it was on a Saturday, we took about an hour together with a cup of coffee. That's usually in the mix, a cup of coffee. And we would sit together and we would stop and consider the week before. We evaluated our previous week. How did we do in our time with the Lord? How did we do connecting as a married couple? How did we do with our children? How's the discipline part? What are the areas with our kids that we're seeing that need to be addressed? You just stop and you begin to evaluate the previous week. Now, as we evaluated that previous week, it helped us to now make a new week, plan a new week. What are the adjustments that we needed to make to have a better week? Let's not look at something and say, well, that wasn't good, and leave it that way. And listen, when you know you're walking in hopelessness when you see something that is not good, but you don't do anything to change it. And may the Spirit of the Lord strengthen you and encourage you right now, because there is no area that when you look to God is hopeless. None. As bad as it feels, as dark as it looks, let me tell you, this is who God is. So lift up your head and look to the Lord, because your help comes from him. So don't allow hopelessness in your life. Don't allow it. But begin to evaluate and say, okay, these decisions that we're making aren't good, so let's adjust it. So make it a weekly pattern. I'd be amazing sometimes, even if we do it on a daily basis. How is my day today? What do I need to adjust? That can feel overwhelming to try to do that every day, but I know for Jerry and I, just that simple once a week, over a cup of coffee, to evaluate our previous week. What was good? What wasn't good? What needs to be changed? And what do we need to focus on that will keep leading us into what we know God has for us? Those conversations made a significant difference. And when you do that week after week, it doesn't need to be with a spouse. You can do it by yourself, or you can find a good friend that you can process these things together. There's something so magnificent about having somebody that you trust, that you can share honestly and openly, that can point out the blind spots, because we all have them, and they can speak candidly to us, and we can speak candidly to them. Don't allow yourself to be isolated. Find that partner, find that friend that you can share these things and look and evaluate decisions you're making and saying, where do I need to make adjustments? Because the goal is to be able to look and say, that's good. That's good. Let's do what God did. He created something. He looked. He saw that it was good. Then he continued, right? And if you find, again, that it's not good, then say, Lord, give me the wisdom. What do I need to adjust? What do I need to change? Do you know, it completely just blows my mind that an airplane that is in Japan can land in a very, I mean, it's wide, but it's not that wide, in a very narrow landing strip in Los Angeles. How in the world does a plane in Japan fly all those miles and land in this one particular landing strip? Well, I don't know if you know this, but when the pilots put in the programming of where they're supposed to land, the plane throughout the flight is making constant adjustments. It's making constant adjustments. If it didn't make those little adjustments, you would end up way off course. But the fact that the plane is constantly making adjustments, they actually can be in one place far, far, far away, and yet by the time they land in that specific designated spot for them. Why? Because throughout the flight, they made the necessary adjustments, and because they did it consistently, it wasn't this big old, oh no, we're going the wrong way, let's come all the way back. No, those little adjustments, time and time again, keep you in a place that when you come to the end of your life, you can look back and say, surely I fulfilled what God had for me. Surely God took areas in my life that were dark and void and made them into areas that were full of life and beauty and order. Again, my brothers and sisters, there's no area in your life that God desires for it to remain in darkness. God, as a matter of fact, the first thing God said was, let there be light. And God's calling those areas in your life to be light. Find out the plan of God. Speak what God speaks. Ask Him for the wisdom on what to do step by step to go from darkness to light, from void into a full life. And then just follow what He says. Don't get ahead of Him. Don't let pressure cause you to react. Simply follow what He's saying to you, even if it doesn't seem like enough. When Jesus would speak, it would often not seem like enough. When Peter said, if it's you, Lord, call me out of the boat to walk on water, Jesus said, come. That word doesn't seem enough to defy the odds of natural gravity, of even the laws of science. But because Jesus speaks these things, it is enough. So whatever instruction Jesus gives you, it will be enough. But you need to stay with what He says, stay consistent with what He says, and then make it a lifestyle to pause and to evaluate what you're doing, the decisions you're making. Take a look at the various parts of your life and just allow truthfulness to say, am I doing well in this area? Don't get under condemnation if you're not. Don't allow condemnation and guilt. All of us have areas where we can look and go, yeah, that's not good. All of us have that. But then say, okay, Lord, so again, help me to go from where I am to where you want me to be. And as you evaluate and you make those adjustments, watch and see that every area, as you follow what the Lord is saying, as you follow even the simple ways of God in Genesis chapter 1, you will find yourself living a life that you will look back and say, thank God that was the life that I lived. And it's not late. It is not late. You are not too far gone. You haven't blown it too much. Even if you're older and you think, well, I may only have the next 5-10 years. Let's start here. Let's start here and watch what God will do. When you align yourself with Him and you call on Him and you follow Him, it is amazing what happens. There's no one too far gone. There's no situation that's too late. God wants to bring every area of your life from chaos into order and from darkness into light. Be strengthened today, my brothers and sisters.
Thank you for watching today. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these videos. And if you'd like to start a house church, either with The Rock, a Foursquare church, or with Solid Lives, our global discipleship and church planning ministry, go to one of those websites. Go to therock.com for The Rock or solidlives.com for Solid Lives. Click on House Churches and fill out the interest form. We'd love to partner with you to advance the kingdom of God.